Hello, everyone. It is on my time it says 2:59. It just hit 3 o'clock on another clock. We have Barbara Karnes, hospice pioneer, award-winning end-of-life educator, award-winning nurse, hospice innovator award winner 2018, and an international humanitarian woman of the year. Like, I am so happy to have you here, Barbara. I mean, a woman of the year, and we are in Women's History Month. So
Perfect.
this
How's
is
that?
great.
Yes, yes.
So we were just talking about some of your creations, and one of the creations is Gone From My Sight, which your booklet has totally changed just the hospice industry and remains the most widely used educational booklet and simple terms, which is someone like me who needs that. And it's been in print since 1985. So, what can you tell us about these wonderful booklets here? I think it's a set of four, right?
I've got so many. There's a set. I think it's of 5 called End of Life Guidelines series, but then I've got a lot of others. So I want to say that my materials I've written when I've seen a need, and they've come at different segments of the year, um, because hospice has evolved, and with that came what I thought were various needs that needed to be filled. I wrote Gone From My Sight when I was a primary care hospice nurse, and none of us knew what we were doing, and our patients were teaching us how
Nice.
people die because we didn't, the medical model addresses diseases. It doesn't really address people.
Right.
And so, and certainly didn't and still has trouble addressing death and dying.
Mm.
So the patients were teaching me, and one night I was on call, 3 o'clock in the morning, actually, and mom's in the bedroom, family was scared, and so I made a on-call visit, and I'm sitting in the family room explaining to the family what's happening, that mom's doing what she's supposed to be doing. Here's why she's breathing the way she is. And one of the daughters was taking notes. And
Mm.
I thought, oh, what is wrong with this? She shouldn't have to be taking notes on what I'm saying. So
Yes.
that weekend, before computers, sat down with the legal pad and wrote what I wanted families to know about the normal, natural way that people die. And I
Mm.
wrote it in 5th grade level with no medical ease. I did that on purpose
For
because
people like me.
I wanted everyone to be able to read it and understand it. I made it short on
Nice.
purpose because people under stress don't have the energy or the time to read a book.
Yeah.
So I made it, 13, 14 pages.
Right.
And
Right.
then because I was talking about a topic that was really, really hard to
Mm.
read about, I wanted it to be gentle.
Mm.
So those are the 3 categories for all of my material. 5th grade level, short, simple, and gentle.
Mm.
And then as hospice and care for people who are dying evolved,
Mm.
um, it reached a point where when I was working, our goal was to be with the family and the patient at the moment of death. That was the goal. Everything we did led up to the moment of death, and all the support that we gave gradually descended. Today, I'm sorry to say that most people who are dying at home, um, when their loved one dies or alone.
Mm,
So because of that, I wrote The 11th Hour to guide the family on what to do while dad's doing all this stuff that they don't understand.
right.
Then I wrote a booklet on grief because people don't understand. I don't now. At this point, I learned a whole lot more about grieving. And then I wrote one on pain and dementia. So I've addressed all those areas where I've seen a need. That was
Yes.
probably more than you wanted
No,
to
no,
know.
no, that's perfect because
Okay.
you set the frame, Barbara, in just layman's terms, when someone, who's new to this, and especially in America, like, we just were not around when someone's dying, and sometimes I think that people are afraid when they're afraid of something, they wanna put it in the back of the closet, so sometimes I think that in the back of my people's minds, because they're insecure and they're uneducated, that sometimes for them and maybe family members, it's a little easier for it to happen in a hospital or a facility because you don't know what to do. You're like, "Oh, those people know what to do."
Right. Also, I think a big factor is that because of lack of knowledge and because of lack of understanding about how death comes and what happens, we don't have any role models on what it's like to die, and people don't die like they do in the movies, and
Yeah,
the movies is the only role model we most of us have. And so when mom is dying and we're at the bedside and she's not doing what Judi Dench did when she died in whatever film, which was say something profound, close her eyes, and she's dead. So when dad or mom is picking at the air and they're restless and their eyes are open and they're making funny sounds, we think something's wrong. Something pathological is happening when in reality, this is how people die, and that there's only two ways to die, and that's either fast or gradually. And so, if we can get people educated about how death comes. And here's what's normal and what is pathological. I think we will have people at home more comfortable having hospice, having end of life doulas, um, and not just, I will say this, but I'm smiling, bury their head in the sand uh,
yeah,
and not look at what reality is giving them. The fear keeps us at bay and think, oh, mom should be in the hospital or
oh,
nursing facility because I'm not going to know how to do this. When really, mom should be at home with all those that love her and care about her. And then the caregivers and the family can have the support of an
right.
end of life doula or of a hospice.
Exactly, exactly. You know, I do my LinkedIn Lives every Tuesday. I've been doing the modules that I went through for my death doula training because I said it's just a way of letting other people know and just get ideas rolling in their heads that they can do this. There's
Oh,
no reason not to. It's like learning how to change a
absolutely.
diaper on one end and saying, "Okay, how is it you want things to be?" And it's even easier because the person that's dying can actually share with them what it is they want, and how to be cared for. So, that's what I'm doing, trying to spread the education and, do
Good for you.
workshops and things just to get people more educated around it.
Yeah, good work, because that really reaching out to as many people as you can to give accurate guidance and to dispel some of the fears that people have, so that we're all going to die someday. And, most of us want to be home in our own bed with our family there. And if we can educate enough people, we will be able to they will be able to give their special person that fulfill that wish of being home and being taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's no greater honor, to give that person is than to be there for them and give them that, rite of passage. I
Perfect.
think that,
Yeah.
our parents or other people help us go through rites of passage, whether that's, turning 16 or 18 or getting married, just so many different things that we go through, and we owe it to others to be there and witness that passage.
Well, and we are born, we experience, and we die. That's the life cycle. And what's interesting and what if the more people that understand this, I think it will neutralize a lot of fear. And that is if you look, we go through labor for birth to get into this world. The first thing we do is we drink water, and then it's milk, and then it's soft foods before we get to regular food. We socialize. First, it's mom, and then it's family, and then we gradually reach out. We sleep all the time, and then gradually we get to a point where we're taking naps, and then we're up. When you know where I'm going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And when we're dying, that process is reversed.
Nice.
All 3 areas are
Yeah,
completely reversed, and that's the normal life cycle.
right.
It's how we got onto this earth, and it's how we will leave it. And people don't think about that until someone says, "Oh, think about this." And some of the fear is new. It'll never be all gone, but fear can be diminished
Mhm, mhm.
when we see how normal dying is.
Yeah. I've noticed, I've had some friends where they would have, where siblings, where one, would kinda conflict as to what would happen to their mother. Um, there was a couple, some sisters, and the mother was not doing well, and the sister was so fearful of death that she wouldn't let her mother just naturally pass. That she just kept saying, "No, no, we need to do this, we need to do that, and you do that," and the other daughter who is, a Stephen minister with me, she's just like, it's just so hard where someone doesn't wanna accept, um, just the natural course of things and how her mother just suffered for another couple of years. Um,
It's
Understand
very,
it.
very sad, and it comes out do I use the word ignorance?
Yeah.
It's lack of knowledge and
Mhm.
not being open to learning, to
It's
hearing what is natural and normal. And family dynamics when someone's dying, um, we don't change. Those dynamics simply intensify. Our
mhm.
personality and how we interact with people, it intensifies because of all the stress and the fear that we caregivers and family are carrying. And so that will complicate. If there were tensions in a relationship before mom
Mm.
started dying, then there's going to be even more tension, probably.
Right,
Um,
right.
every once in a while, a family will come together and say, like, we're going to put our tensions and our differences aside, and we're going to work together with
Right.
mom.
At least
And
out of the room. At least out of the room.
And that is really a blessing that we families can give. And we who work in end of life, That's part of what we're trying to do, is help these families create a sacred memory, and
Yes.
they will carry that sacred memory with them forever.
Mm.
And that's what we do in this work.
Yeah, and I think the big epiphany that only there's certain epiphanies that only happen when you are around someone's end of life. I mean, these are just major moments, and you take that gift away from people if you don't allow your dying person to accept it along with the family. Because
Mhm.
it's a gift for everyone.
It is. It being with someone at end of life
Mm,
can either be the most beautiful experience that you carry in your heart
mm,
forever,
mhm, mhm.
or through lack of knowledge and lack of support, it can be the most horrifying, awful experience that you will also
Right.
carry with you forever. And that's why getting support and guidance, and
Mhm.
why end of life workers take care of the family and the caregivers as much as we do the person that's dying,
Right,
because we want to create that sacred experience, and we have to do that with knowledge and with emotional support.
right, right. Yeah, it sounds like just like they say when someone watches the birth of a child, it'll go either way too. It'll traumatize you, or you'll say, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen."
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, you made a an I'm quoting you from something. It said, "Die like you live." What are your thoughts on that? I just love that. Die like
Well,
you live.
we die according to our personality. And if we what happens is that personality intensifies as we approach end of life. So if we were gentle and sweet and easygoing, then we're
Uh-huh.
going to become a little marshmallow
Mm,
as we approach death. If we were kind of hostile and negative and argumentative, then we're going to become an absolute handful.
oh boy.
Um, because dying doesn't change who we are, it
Right.
intensifies who we are.
Oh, man. Might need some gummies now. That's pretty good. Well, that's how you say. It just helps everyone to understand and know what to look forward to. You have a blog. I called it a book, my mistake, but to me, it just opened up a great dialogue about when you're having a hard time with someone, um, and in your blog about your husband, Jack, I'm sorry, my condolences. You shared a just a real view on your relationship and how that affected your grief process. Would you share a little bit about that?
I will. I learned about grief. I knew it intellectually, but I didn't know it emotionally until I walked in those shoes. And the
Mm,
reason I am sharing, because anything that I'm feeling and thinking, I think other people are also. And I know, um, so I will share that my husband's been dead for 6 months. And at first, you're kind of numb and you aren't really thinking. But then, after a few weeks,
mm,
all I could remember was the negative.
mm.
And we have been together. Notice I said have, so I'm not even using past tense
Oh,
yet. We had been together 65 years and
wow.
we were married 62. Well, there's no perfect relationship. There's good times and there's difficult times.
Mm,
That's life. what surprised me is that rather than remembering all the great times that we have had, I was all these negatives, frustration, times were bubbling up.
Mm.
And that was obviously disconcerting to me. But then I realized other people must also have this experience. And I know how bad I feel about myself
Mm.
in thinking these thoughts. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to tell my kids. They're going to think, what an awful person here. Dad's dead. And I'm thinking about when he was ornery. Um, so, what I've learned about this is in some cases, and more than I think anyone is aware of, is that the challenges in a relationship that come up as unpleasant,
Mhm.
and I'll use the word negative experiences, but unpleasant, um, often have to come to the surface so you can look at them and let them go. And then there is room for the positive memories to come forward and appreciate. Now, most people, as soon as a person dies, they're elevated to sainthood. We don't look at or talk about, oh, he was such an ornery guy. We don't do that. It was, oh, he was wonderful. And he's a saint now. And because of that, the griever who's
Mm.
hearing all these other people say how wonderful this guy was, well, you don't really know someone till you live with them,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
So, so the griever, the partner, doesn't want to say, because, hey, I
Yeah.
remember when this guy did such and such. Um, we don't want to say that
Yeah.
because then we're taking away the comfort that these people who are making them a saint. And we
Yeah.
think there's something wrong with us because we're not making them a saint, when in reality, there aren't any saints on this planet.
Yeah. I don't wanna say, names or anything, but someone, uh, not too distant in my family line, they, were married to someone for many, many years, and the husband was known to be just very ornery, negative. Everyone in the family said this. And the wife, just sweet and always looking for the positive side of things. Well, he died, and she continued on, and now she's not doing well, but at least the family were able to understand what she went through and put up with for years. But it was nice for her to have, family that could at least acknowledge what a difficult person he was the whole life.
Yes, yes.
And, she should be put up for sainthood.
Well, and that kind of realistic looking at a person who has died
Right,
helps everybody.
exactly, and
Every
you learn what
every
not to do
single
too.
Yeah. I mean, and we hear, well, he was a difficult guy, but I'm not gonna say anything to the children about what I'm thinking because I don't want to affect their image of their dad. Well, let
Exactly.
me tell you, if he was ornery and cantankerous with you, the wife, then he was also ornery and cantankerous with the children. And they've had that emotions and thoughts, and get it out and talk about it so that all of you can let go
Yeah,
of what you're holding inside and see how normal you all are. Because we tend to think, well, I'm the bad guy because I'm remembering this negative stuff. When
Right.
yeah, where if you
Yeah.
talk about it with the family, it's good.
Yeah, that's why I'm big on the storytelling. So I do a lot of storytelling,
Mhm.
and it's a great way to bring people's, kind of visions and put it in perspective and then make little shifts. So, you can move through the grief a little bit easier and, really share, with the family.
Right.
Actually, I'm taking this happiness course, and it said 40% of, uh, like, there's a gene in you, a negative and happy gene, and that makes up, like, 40%. So it's in your genes to be happy or not happy, that's something. So when
Mhm.
we're looking at this conversation, I'm just like, people don't even realize that it's important to look at the whole package because you could have it in your genes where, you know, you're at naturally a naturally negative person, and so you need to work at it a little bit and reframing stories. It doesn't take away from what things that have happened, but what it does is it helps you with as a person that needs to stay engaged, with their family and loved ones and be healthy and grieve healthily. It helps that process. So just to reframe it.
Well, and we are a product of our upbringing. Everything that has occurred to us from the moment of birth have affected and created who we are today. And a hard life will, as a youngster, as a teenager, whether no matter what's hard about it,
Mhm.
affects who we are and how we deal with other people and
Yeah.
how we deal with our challenges in life. Um, and I think that's important for us to remember when we're working with someone who is a challenge, or working with a family that's having these challenges,
Mhm.
is that all of us are a product of our upbringing. And these are our scars, so to speak,
Yeah.
that we carry.
Yeah.
That's made us who we are.
Yeah. And coping mechanisms may have worked for us at one point in life, but sometimes people don't let go of those coping mechanisms. And
Mhm,
that's a way to make that, uh, awareness. And again, for a child that's left behind to deal with it, say, okay, well, this is how, my parent coped with a certain situation. This is how it affected me, but at least you understand it. And you're like, oh, okay, it wasn't me. Like,
mhm.
that's just what they were using to cope. So
Yep.
it just helps everyone to take a deep look into these things. Now, I wanted to ask over, since it's like Women's History Month, I also wanted to ask, maybe this is a big question, but over the last 40 years, what has been, I guess there's always a good and bad, um, when you look at uh, death and dying, do you think there's been any major trends that you've seen, um, over that scope?
The positive trend that I've seen, and it goes back to when I was a nurse's aide in high school. Um, People in the and that's in the 50s, but let's start with the 40s. In the 40s and before, lived at home with her family. She died in the upstairs bedroom. And we were all there and we learned how to die
Mhm.
because she was our role model and we were there. In the 50s and 60s, the medical environment with hospitals became more prominent and people started dying in the hospital. and they were in a bedroom, a room at the end of the hall. They were alone. Family was not there. In the 70s and 80s and forward, grandma was in a nursing facility. And again, she probably died alone, and we didn't have her as a role model. This
Mm,
is coming full circle now in that, and grandma always wanted to be home. I mean, she
right,
wanted to be home, but our society and our structure became more medically oriented and fixing oriented, even when we in the medical knew it wasn't fixable, but we
right.
kept trying. So we've come full circle,
Hmm,
and now grandma, we want grandma at home. Grandma wants to be home, and end of life doulas and hospice over the years has provided that support to allow this to come full circle. And because so many have not had been given the knowledge or the experience to have grandma at home, then it's you and I and people like us that are sharing what we know about dying and death to educate those that haven't had the opportunity to have this beautiful experience.
right, right. Have you noticed any uptick in any way, or what are your thoughts on having more education in the work environment? What are your thoughts on that under
Well,
wellness?
um, there are now palliative care specialists. There are gerontologists that are looking at, people dying. Um, Hospice, doing community service in education. Stephen's ministry, you mentioned that,
Yep.
is a great source of community education and support. So, yes, I think we went through in the 70s and 80s learning about end of life. And then from about 90s forward, um, we began sharing what we've learned. And that's where we are now, kind of, because what concerns me is that end of life is becoming more medicalized, and it's becoming more business. And it started off with those of us that were in it were there because our heart said, you've got to do this. Where today, in a lot of places, it's a job.
Right, right.
And that makes me sad.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy you mentioned, Stephen Ministry. That's where I actually got all my well, I was volunteer doing, obviously, but that's
Mhm.
where I got my real, exposure to dealing with grief. Um,
I used to go when I was working, so we're talking 80s and 90s, um, go to various churches in Kansas City
mhm.
and do workshops for Stephen's ministry, and it's incredible work, and I go back a long way with Stephen's ministry.
Nice, nice. Thank you. And actually, I wanted to so Jack, going
Mhm,
gonna jump back to Jack.
okay.
Have you ever I was talking motorcycles.
Oh.
With with Julia. I said, I was wondering, I said, "Has Barbara ever been on a motorcycle?"
Oh my goodness, have I been on a motorcycle. Jack we had probably 3 motorcycles, and I have never driven a
Okay.
motorcycle. In fact, Jack would say, "No, no, no, you're not coordinated enough to do this." But I've held on many a time, and we used to go from Omaha to the Lake of the Ozarks. I drove the van, uh, with a trailer,
Okay.
and Jack and the kids would ride their motorcycles, and we
Oh,
had and from Omaha all the way down. That was a great fun thing, and then they had motorcycles at the lake, and, so motorcycles are very much a part of my living with Jack.
oh, that's wonderful. And your son, he now is this your son does your son ride, the one who works with you in you have a family business, which
Have a
I
family
love.
business.
So female-led and family-ran business, I love it.
Yes, yes. And everyone lives here in Vancouver or in Portland, which is just across the bridge. So I'm so blessed
You are.
that my family is close and we are all close. Um, Nobody's got a motorcycle right now,
No.
but, we grew up with motorcycles.
I remember when I did a, iron butt a couple years ago. You know what an iron butt is?
No.
So that's where you ride your motorcycle for 24 hours, and
Oh,
you have to go 1,000 miles.
wow, okay.
And one gentleman that was part of this, the group I was with, it was, 12 of us, myself and 11 other guys, and one of the gentlemen, his wife had died maybe a year and a half earlier, and he had given up riding his motorcycle when they had gotten married and had children. Well,
Mm.
after she passed away, first thing he did was go buy a motorcycle, and he put the most beautiful, like, memorial on the front of the motorcycle, on the what do you call it? The fairing of his wife and her date and everything, and
Oh, isn't that cool?
it was the sweetest, just touching thing.
And that he went back to riding motorcycles, to finding a joy
Yeah.
that he had sacrificed
Yes.
for various reasons, and good for him
Yeah.
for
So, yeah, there was a point where I was starting to give up. It was, like, hour 20, and the wind was whipping. There was a wind advisory, and I was just exhausted. I was seeing things, and we stopped for gas, and he's 74. He was
wow,
74 doing this,
cool,
and, he just gave me a real, pep talk, if that's what you wanna call it. It's like,
and got you
"You're
through
not
so you
getting
could
off on this, Michelle. I'm 74. You can do this."
and you did, right?
And I did it. Yeah, we did it in 22 hours, but, yeah, it's beautiful to see how he just he did that in the spirit of his wife and put that on his motorcycle. I
Mhm.
just thought that was, uh, really, really cool. That was a really
He
cool thing.
brought her with him.
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah,
brought Um, so we are, what, 3:38. I don't know if anyone had any questions, but they can feel free if they have anyone here has any questions. We have the chat on. I have the chat, but I don't see any questions. I'm sure we have a lot of listeners. People will listen.
just, "Hey, guys, I talk about anything, just ask me."
So tell me about the package right now for the booklets. I'm actually part of a grief. There's going to be the first grief conference here in Connecticut, August 31st. So, um, I'm hoping we can, put out your booklets and I can share them with, people that are coming to the conference. And if anyone is interested in coming, they can, reach out to me and let me know. But I have your website here with your books.
Okay.
And tell me about, you mentioned the package. What's your latest addition to the books? And I know you have DVDs.
I do. I have DVDs and um, 2 books, um, books, not
Right,
just
right.
14 pages. My newest book is called By Your Side, and I wrote it for caregivers on how to take care of their special person and how to take care of themselves, because caregivers get lost in the shuffle.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wrote, it's still large print and it's not, I don't know, it's probably 30, 40 pages. So it's not huge, huge, but it is guidance on how to take care of someone, not just physically, but emotionally, um, and how to take care of themselves,
Oh,
because
themselves.
that's important also. I have a DVD and a booklet that goes with it on taking care of yourself,
Nice.
whether you're an end of life doula, whether you're a hospice professional. We, in the end of life arena, as caregivers and professionals, have some unique challenges
Mm.
that other healthcare professionals don't have, and other, whether it's chaplains or social workers or whoever, um, taking care of end of life, you give a different part of yourself. And so you have to take care of yourself differently. So, so I wrote a booklet and did a DVD for this group of people, because you're important, you do incredible work, and most people who get into this kind of work are fix-it personalities. They tend to put themselves last, and take care of and reach out to everyone else, and so I address those issues.
Okay, 1 second. Let me.
Have I lost you? Nope,
Okay.
there you
I
are.
Okay, good. So we froze for a minute there. So I was just like, "I'm just gonna open this throttle and just see if we get there," and it did. It came right
And it
back.
came through.
So,
Good. Okay.
um, what are some could you, when you talk about these techniques for self-care in the end of life, where there's special things, could you just name 1 or 2 things that you really find that are helpful,
Okay,
for
I'd love
people,
to.
like,
One
down the road?
is we need closure. We
Mm,
who work with end of life, if you have a family and a patient, when that patient dies, you need some kind of closure so you can move on. And I went to all visitations, and that was my closure of saying goodbye. But visitations aren't always happening these days.
right.
So, keep a journal. That's one thing. Writing down the patient's name and their date of death, and a couple of sentences about them. Light a candle, bring home a flower, and concentrate in your ritual, whatever you decide to create, um, a way of having closure and saying goodbye. I
Mm,
also think it's very important when you're working in end of life to have a buddy, to have someone that you can talk to, because we deal with confidentiality and we tend to carry this all within us. We need one person, not that's going to talk to us, not that's going to give us advice, but one person with a set of ears that will let us say anything that we need to say. You know, that person that you've had, we as a caregiver, you've had a really tough day, and you get in your car and you call your buddy and you say, "Oh my God, you aren't going to believe what just happened." And they're going to let you download so that you're not carrying that. You have to get it out. And there's nothing that buddy can have any answers, but they'll listen. And
Right.
that's what you want. And I think everyone needs a
Yeah.
buddy.
Yeah, I know with, Stephen Ministry, that's what we had too. We would have supervision, meetings, and that's what that was for. That was just to share your experience. It wasn't about the details of your care receiver. It was just to help you, and then also what was nice is our peers would point things out, like, "Michelle, maybe you're offered too much advice, maybe you shouldn't be offering that. That sounds like more advice. You shouldn't give advice," which it's just like a
Mhm.
reminder, or someone's having a challenge, maybe your care receiver was, um, looking for someone to drive them around. Well, as a Stephen minister, that's not your job to go driving them around. So we would have each other to point things out, like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. That's a boundary.
Mhm.
Um, and it really helped them process, helped all of us just process by having someone to listen to.
Having someone to listen to us,
Everyone
that
needed.
we are safe because we have confidentiality issues. You're not gonna share with your neighbors, the work you do.
Of course.
But if you've got a safe environment, and whether that's one person or it's a support group, you need that in order to stay in this work. Because if you don't take care of yourself doing this work, you'll end up not being able to do it and you'll leave.
Right. Yeah. After I do I've done, finished my doula training, I'm pacing myself because I know what it's like from all my volunteering that you could burn yourself out. So
Easy.
I have my volunteering at hospice. I have, um, I quit my job, my other 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
And so now I'm like, okay, I'm going to do more of my storytelling, workshops, end of life, that kind of educational side. But I will also, if someone wants me to do that, death doula part of things, I'll only do that a certain amount of time because it's very,
Life consuming. And
yeah,
you have to recognize that it is other people's pain is
mm,
not yours to carry.
right,
And we caregivers often take on other people's challenges and
mm,
their pain. It's not ours. We're there to support and guide, not to become emotionally involved.
right,
Now, that said, every once in a while, someone will come into your life and they will get into your heart
mm,
and they will become more to you than just someone that you're working with an end of life.
mhm,
And that's going to be normal. But if every single person that you worked with and took care of got into your heart, you'd be selling dresses at Macy's in a few years because you wouldn't be able to do this. Most of the people that I took care of, I
mhm,
took care of children of as children of God, and
mm,
my job was to help support this child of God and the family. But I can name on this hand those people that got into Barbara's hand mind and heart. But if they all did, I wouldn't be here today.
yeah, yeah, that's one of the things, like, again, I go back to Steve Ministry, it was the best training for me, because number 1, they would teach us about the don't get stuck in the mud hole with someone, like, you reach in, you offer help and support, but you can't get in there. You can't get in there with
Absolutely.
them because otherwise you can't get out.
Yeah,
So that's like
absolutely.
a great mental thing. And then like you, my ability to lift it up to God is very strong. I don't know if you saw much about my background. Um, so I had been through an abusive relationship, and then I had escaped with my 2 children back to the US, and then they were stolen from me again.
Mhm.
But, on the night that I first escaped with the 2 children, I mentally lifted my children to God, and I said, "God, if you let me get my girls back to the US, it doesn't matter what happens to me. They're in your care." And it was like giving my own children to God's care, lifted fear of death, and helped my ability to lift others and them up to God's care. So you reminded me when you said that, that's how I look at people. I look at the you're in God's hands. I don't speak it to them, but I know that they are in the ultimate best hands. Um, and like you, that's how it helps me to um
Well, and you made a really good point, and that is you don't share that with the people that you're working with. It is not our place to share our belief system,
exactly. Yep.
but to look to find out what their belief system is and help them be supported by that belief. I've said it many, many times. If someone believes that pink elephants are going to come in and carry dad off, I'm going to hold the door open for the pink
Exactly,
elephants,
exactly. And
and
and it's yes, and so many people, um, I think that's important for people to hear because I think sometimes people think, "Oh, if I bring someone in to help my loved one, well, they're gonna start pushing ideals that they have."
mhm.
And I don't want that, and neither does my family member want that, and that's important for people to understand that we are not there to do that. When we talk about that, that's just for how we do that's for our hearts, and our
And it's
soul.
not, yeah,
It's
and we don't
that's where the
share that.
boundary
Yeah, you
yeah,
and
that's
I can
behind the
share it.
boundary.
You and I can share it, but we're not gonna share it with the family, or our patients.
Exactly, yeah, it's all about them.
And if they say, "Barbara, what do you believe?" Then I'm gonna say, I don't talk about what I believe, but I'd love to hear what you believe."
Yeah, and your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole thing. Asking people what their experience is, whether it comes to death and dying, you know, if religion came into anything, like they'll just share with you. It's
Mhm.
important to ask people, what their experience has been. So, have you done anything for children? Any booklets or anything?
Um, no, and there's a reason. When I was, the hospice nurse in the '80s and the '90s, I worked with another nurse
Mhm.
who had written a book on child end of life, and she loved working with children, that were dying.
Mm.
And emotionally, I couldn't do it. And I remember, have we got time for a story?
Oh, yes, I'd love to hear it.
I remember walking in to do an initial assessment, bring this family onto hospice. And I walk in the room, the bedroom. Mom is behind me, following me in to meet her son, who, and I don't even remember now why he had a life-threatening illness, but he was the patient, and he was probably 19 or 20, and his girlfriend was sitting on the bed with him, and we walk in the room, and I burst out crying. And I backed up and literally backed up into mom because I'm crying. And we get out in the hall, and I said, I have a son at KU who is exactly this age.
Mm.
And I saw my son there. And we sat in the living room and we talked about what it felt like and what she was experiencing. Um, and I did the initial assessment. And then I went to the office and said, I can't do this. I need Jody, I need you to take over this. And so anytime there were children, I knew that that was not my area.
Right, right. Yeah, it's important to know, especially as an intake. When I was the Stephen minister, I was also one of the leaders. So I would be the person that would initially meet with people and pair them up
Mm.
according to their needs and background with which Stephen minister they would meet with. And you're right, you just not everyone can deal with every situation. Um, and you need to make sure both are stay healthy, so yeah,
And to know our own limitations, you know.
100% to be honest with ourselves
Mhm.
because it's not about us.
It's not about us at all.
It's not about us. That is the beauty. Well, thank you. It's not about us. We will end on that beautiful thought there. I don't see any questions. Let me double check, make sure there's no questions. I don't see any questions. But thank you so much, Barbara. This was wonderful. I just much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This conversation was stimulating. We did good work, and thank you for sharing with me your experiences and letting us have this conversation.
Well, we will keep in touch and we will be sharing your books, and you have Barbara's website right here, bkbooks.com. And her whole family is there to help and support you. So please give them a call. And I see someone just said, thank you both so much, Barbara. So
Oh,
we
thank
love
you.
you and we cherish everything that you give from your heart to everyone, just and your
Oh,
blog and your honesty and sharing your life. And I'm sorry for what you've
but that,
lost.
grief is a part of life.
It is.
And if you look at um, life is
Mm,
like school, and you come in to learn things in life.
yeah.
And I have never been independent. I've never been responsible alone for me. I've
Oh,
always been a we, from parents to nursing school with a really strict house mother to 2 weeks later getting married. I've always been a we. So here I am now having to learn my life lesson of how to
mm,
be a me, how to just live on my own. So that's yes, it's sad that Jack's gone, but I look at this new life adventure, this new course I'm
yes.
taking.
It's another chapter.
It is. And so this is just a normal, natural part of life. And I'll learn through it, as we all will.
Well, you go, girl. And you have any questions, you know to call on the finance stuff. I'm not licensed or anything like that, but if I can give you any feedback or anything, I'm here for you. And I think there's lots of people that are here for you. But we will keep an eye out and we will see you soon. But thank you.
Okay.
Everyone, remember, check out Barbara's website here, bkbooks.com, and connect with her family because they are all here to help support you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Barbara. Bye.
Bye.